Irvin, thank you very, very much for joining me to discuss about the first game of the season between Mumbai Indians, the Juggernaut, and Royal Challengers Bangalore. Of course, Mumbai are chasing a hat-trick of title wins, and Bangalore, whether they will be able to win their maiden IPL title or not, is something that everyone is looking out for. Now, fans won't be allowed inside the stadium, which is why a lot of activities we are expecting on the second screen. Every fan wants to become a super selector, and you have the cues to how to become a super selector by giving them fantasy predictions. So let me start out by asking you your top batsman and wicketkeeper picks for this match.
Sure. So we've run a ton of numbers and created a bunch of algorithms to really look at the data. And we'd say, looking at this match, we've got three picks, right? Kohli, an obvious name right at the top, may not have been in his best form in his last 10 games, but he is an absolute run machine in the IPL. So you can't go and have a team without him. But we think there are a couple of really good value players with the Mumbai team, and that's Ishan, Kishan and Surya Kumar Yadav, and they rate in our algorithms.
Okay, and tell me, how do the Fantasy Gully ratings work?
So we actually look at a lot of data. We've said averages, strike rates are numbers of the past. We look at actual fantasy points, but we contextualize it based on things like form, the opposition, how you play at a particular venue. If it's a more spin-friendly pitch, does a Surya Kumar Yadav do better against spin, for instance? And as a result of that, we come up with a holistic number and come up with a rating.
And Mumbai Indians are going to play quite a few of their games, in fact, on spin-friendly pitches this time around. None of the games are going to be held for Mumbai Indians in Mumbai. So that's an interesting aspect of this year's IPL, which neutralizes advantages of respective teams. No Mumbai in Mumbai, no Chennai in Chennai, no Bangalore in Bangalore. Very, very interesting dynamics that will play out. But talking about today's match, Irvin, Ishan Kishan, bit of a dark horse versus the top-notch players. What are your thoughts about him? Because everyone's, talking about him and also expecting maybe he might open for the Mumbai Indians.
He plays spin pretty well, so that'll come in handy in Chepauk and even when they move to Delhi. But, he's been in great form. Like we talked about the 50 he scored against England. But if you go back to the last IPL, he's averaging 64 fantasy points per game. That's incredible because something like 30 to 40 is considered decent. And he's almost Kohli-esque when it comes to chasing in his last two IPLs, right? He's got a staggering almost 42 runs per innings while chasing, but when he bats first, it's 23. His strike rate jumps up from 110 to 150 plus when chasing. So really, I think if Mumbai are chasing in particular, I'd just watch out for Ishan Kishan to get me a ton of points.
Aren't we putting a lot of pressure on Virat Kohli once again by saying Ishan Kishan is Kohli-esque while chasing Arvind? I mean, that guy, he's been prolific, and now, the talks of him opening the batting for Royal Challengers Bangalore as well. And do you expect him to be quite impactful up the order? Because, one of the things we've seen about Royal Challengers Bangalore is their inconsistency. Do you think with Kohli at the top, they will be able to regain some consistency?
I think they've definitely tried to shore up the batting, right? Part of the reason why they got Maxwell this year. If Padikkal is fit and playing today, that'll help them as well. But I think Kohli up helps, but I think it's got to be the young guns as well. Someone like a Mohammad Azharuddin, if he comes in and plays for them. Sachin Baby, I'd look for some of these younger players to help, because they've just been too reliant, right? Kohli scored about a quarter of their runs in wins. So they need others to step up as well in order to be more consistent.
Right. They need to take the pressure off Kohli and AB de Villiers. Now, when we talk about fantasy platform, there's, one factor everyone speaks about is the X factor. Could you talk us through what X factor is and who are the X factor players?
Yeah, so, we actually created a metric called X Factor to try and quantify what this term really means, right? And we've said it's a degree of variance mathematically. But in simple terms, what that means is there are some guys who, are going to consistently get you, 20, 30, 40 runs. There's someone else who might get out for a duck or fire and score you a big 100, right? I almost think of Sehwag as my favorite example back in the day, right? And so these are the guys who are higher risk picks, but if they go off, they're going to win you your fantasy for that day. Right? So those are the guys where if you feel a bit risky, you want to take someone, those are the guys to look at. And there's a few in today's match.
Do you think Glenn Maxwell will be one of them? He's been bought by Royal Challengers Bangalore for a premium sum. Few would have expected after a lackluster season like the one he had in the previous season, he would go for 14 plus crore rupees.
I mean, Maxwell's almost the very definition of an X-Factor player, right? Because he can take the game away from you. Right. Worry about how he does against Mumbai, and in particular, in the IPL, they faced off 7 times. Bumrah got him in check, strike rate of about 120. But he's got him out 4 times in those 7 innings, all 4 times bowled. And that's because Maxwell has struggled to pick the variations in pace, line, length. So, if Maxwell's on batting, I'm just bringing Bumrah on to bowl. But Maxwell can also get you points with his bowling, especially in spin-friendly chip-off. Come, roll his arm over, get a wicket or 2, and I'd still pick him in my 11. But it is, I think, a higher risk pick.
Arvind, I would be really curious to know, you've spoken about batsmen X factors. What about the bowlers? Among the bowlers, who could really fit into that mold of being an X factor?
I think you've got your consistent guys like a Bumrah, right? But I think someone like a Chahal on this pitch could really do quite well for you. And then, of course, you've got Trent Bolt. If he does play, again, it's Chepauk. So is Rahul Chahar going to play? And therefore, are you going to get more from that? So I just keep a lookout. But I think the Mumbai bowling in general is stronger. So I'd pick more bowlers from Mumbai.
One guy I'm really looking out for is Mclennan because he's been one of those journeyman cricketers. He's played cricket around the world. And the only thing perhaps he knows is to win. So, they might want to see how much he is able to deliver in this match. So, yes, he is one of my favorites to watch out for in this contest. Talking about fantasy, give me your fantasy team for this match.
So I know fans out there can pick multiple 11s. So we're going to pull up what is more the safe 11, and then we'll talk a little bit about the high risk 11. But we've already talked about, in Ishan, Kishan, and De Villiers. There's some questions of whether De Kock will play or not. So Kishan to keep, which would help. We already talked about the batsmen. We added Rohit Sharma in there. Krunal Pandya, I think, is going to be interesting as an all-round option, along with Maxwell and Hardik. And then with the bowlers, I think Bumrah, Chahal. And then depending on the platform, your budget might allow you to pick a Trent Bolt. If not, you just got to keep an eye out to see who's playing on that day. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing this year, right? Because you're going to have so many last-minute people coming in and out. It's going to be fairly dynamic. So, check out Fantasy Gully, check out NDTV. I think the differentiator between winning and losing is having all the right stats and knowing who's going to play on every single day. And I think there's going to be some interesting risky picks today, like a Mohammad Azharuddin, like a Rahul Chahar, but keep an eye out on them as well today.
Mohammad Azharuddin, very, very interesting. We'll really have to see on his debut whether he is able to do justice to his name that he has of our former captain, who was prolific when he made his India debut. Well, listening to you, Arvind, it feels that T20 cricket is not all slam bang pajama cricket. There is more to it. There is a lot of strategy. There's a lot of planning, and there's a lot of canny numbers that will tell you stories through the day, through the season, and we'll hope to catch up with you through the season and know about the stories that unfold. Thank you very much for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you, Rika.